Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Elham Puyamer. I'm independent curator and curatorial team leader of this assembly, Repair and Care live assembly. So I want to say that I live in Vancouver and I respectfully acknowledge that we live and work on the unceded and occupied ancestral and traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The program of today, in the afternoon, is listening to communities. I want to add it listening to artists as well, before, during, and after the events. The moderator of this program is Guadalupe Martinez, who's a great artist herself. Guadalupe is an interdisciplinary artist and educator interested in, interested in understanding the multiple relationships between the sensorial and the environment, identity and place. Born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, she immigrated to Vancouver in 2008, where she lives and works, conscious of her presence on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Placing the body at the center of her practice, Martinez's work often take the form of installation, performance, and collaborative research with a deep consideration for her personal and inherited histories. Through somatic practices and collaboration, Martinez creates alternative spaces of learning and explores the potential for embodied research and love actions to heal and decolonize the body mind. Her commitment to spirituality, teaching, and political awareness underlines the development of her work in diverse contexts, and she has presented her works in Canada, the US, Italy, Mexico, and Argentina. From now on, Guadalupe is taking over. Thanks, Lupe.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I also wrote a little welcome and introduction, even though Elham has already done a really wonderful work at introducing me and the program. So I want to welcome everyone. As Elham said, I'm Guadalupe Martinez, and I will be moderating today's panel, listening to communities before, during, and after the event at the live assembly. I also acknowledge that we live on the unceded, unoccupied, ancestral, and traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. And as I say this, I know that for myself and the participants in this segment, we're humbled of living on these territories, and that we stand in solidarity with the First Nations peoples and the lands and the nature of this land in finding justice and healing. I want to thank Live as well for this invitation, because I'm grateful and very excited to be here today to host this program and these fantastic artists that are, for different circumstances in their careers, emerging or re-emerging to their communities. Today I have here with me Ariel Sunday-Cardinal, Jake Cardinal, Chipo Chipaziwa, James Albers, Reiko Inouye, and Pegah Tabassinejad. I will introduce them more in depth as they start their presentations. But I wanted to share that the artist and I have met a couple of times before today to discuss the great questions that Live has asked us to think about for the Care and Repair Assembly. And we talked about how do they define community, who is their community, and how they have been engaging. We also spoke about the topics that are pressing matters for them at the moment and how they have been addressing them or bringing them into their practices. Today's segment will consist of a series of presentations and conversations by each of the artists and curators participating, each of them presenting aspects of their practice and journey as artists that are deeply rooted and entangled with their own identities and concerns as cultural workers. And we have discussed ways in which each of them could talk about specific projects or aspects of their past work that would bring insight into how we can reflect about these questions that I just mentioned, and also what are the problems that they have encountered as emerging or re-emerging artists. Today, even though I'm kind of reading and speaking to you, we hope it won't be a super formal panel, like academic kind of discussion or presentation. So we hope that it will feel like a conversation by friends, by colleagues, and fellow artists and curators who are all sharing these important questions. And also we share the larger creative and intellectual space. After the presentations, Chipo and Ariel will be performing, and we'll try to save some time for comments and questions at the end. So if you have anything that comes up as we are going through the process, please feel free to send comments or questions via the chat, but maybe the artists can respond as we go. So our first presentation will be by Ariel, Sunday-Cardinal, and Jake, who will be also participating of this presentation. Ariel will be sharing about her journey, spaces of learning, and performing as an Indigenous artist, her experience going through university and traveling, performing abroad, the return to home, and some projects that they're working on. So I'm just going to briefly introduce Ariel and Jake to you. I'm going to read their bios, and then I'm going to hand off the mic to them. So Ariel Sunday-Cardinal is a Cree multidisciplinary artist from a small reservation in northern Alberta. She creates conceptual artwork with focus on philosophy, spirituality, and the human experience, and her experience as a First Nation being. Her work often questions and resists socio-political colonial structures and their role in the selfhood. Jake Cardinal is an award-winning Indigenous writer from Saddle Lake Cree Nation who works primarily in short stories, stage plays, and freelance journalism. The founder of Treaty 6 Contemporary Art Collective, Jake has a focus on community outreach, work with Indigenous peoples in rural Alberta. So please join me in welcoming Ariel and Jake.
Where is that? A lot of people are watching this.
I'm not sure. All right, nice. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having us here. So I guess the topic that was at hand was like our community. And I myself, I come from like a small reserve in northern Alberta. That's where I spent a lot of my time growing up. I guess I'll just give like a brief overview of what I've done these past few years. So I left my reserve at young age of 17 and started going to school at UBC, which is where I guess I began my performance practice. Since then, I've traveled to places and spent a lot of time living in Mexico. I spent some time in Guatemala. And most recently, I went back home. And I think my worlds have been overlapping between, I guess, my own spiritual path and learning what it means to be a woman and taking care of myself as a woman and taking care of other women and mothers and children, that overlapping with my own embodiment in my art practice, because my art practice has always been personal, either like my personal philosophies or my personal experiences. Most recently, well, I guess my experience in performance art has been in a lot of it started in Vancouver. actually, thank you to Guadalupe, who definitely gave us students those opportunities that helped me a lot in my path. And from there, I've done some performance in Mexico, as well as personal things in Guatemala, and then coming back home most recently, this is when I connected with Jake, who I got in connection with him because he was starting a project, a festival, and I wanted to be involved. And he'll speak on that a bit more. From being back home, I guess the community, my art community, has been, well, people like Jake, friends that I've met who are wanting to create other opportunities for First Nations people. Within there, I guess talking about some of the work that I've done, the performances that I've recently done back home spoke on, I guess, again, my personal experiences with trauma and I guess all the heavy stuff that comes along with being First Nations. Yeah, it could get heavy.
Oh my gosh. They love us. They really love us.
And I guess I wanted to include Jake in this conversation because I felt like I've been a bit, not necessarily displaced, but I've been moving around a lot. And that I haven't had maybe like a broader connection with institutions or organizations, but I know that Jake can probably speak a bit more on that because of the work that he's been doing. Take it away.
You want me to take it away?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jake. Good to see you. Good to meet you. I am native Cree. I live beside Ariel on the same reservation, and and I'm a writer. I do some writing here and there. I don't know what to talk about. Just talk about.
Maybe talk about like why.
Do you want me to help you?
Yes, please, please, and thank you. I got a whole routine. What's the deal?
No, I think that some of the things we spoke about and that Ariel briefly touched on, but that I found that were very relevant and interesting for you to share is that, or some of the things I held, I took with me, where kind of Ariel was talking about this sort of fragmentation or separation that she experienced living in the reserve and then moving to Vancouver, going through UBC, which is such an institution and such a wide institution in many ways. And even the ways of learning, the pedagogy, everything is so different. Even if we want to diversify the communities we inhabit, there's some things that at the core are just really hard to bridge. And so this relationship between identity and community, I think it's important. And I'm relating that with in the experience that you've shared of living in the reserve and for Ariel going back there and reconnecting with her home and her identity, the lack of opportunities that you encounter, and so how that takes us to maybe now you can tell us a little bit about how you came up to creating the Treaty 6 Contemporary Art Collective, and how that came about, and what will it be, and the festival, and that how that
Well,
relates to the community as well.
yeah. Well, I think that fragmentation is quite a universal issue for a lot of Native people. I can't speak on non-Native people, but the fragmentation is great. It's people talk about culture shock, going to different countries, taking a 12-hour flight somewhere and then getting off and being like, wow, it's the exact same thing, but just going into a university. First time I went into the U of A, I was scared, man. I thought I was gonna get lynched. I thought someone was gonna come and run up on me or something, And like you said, it's just ways of learning are completely different, because if you can't bridge the gap between your culture and the institutions, then it really destroys a person. It really does a lot to somebody. It's like being left behind at a bus station, and so yeah, it's like, well, if I can't do this, am I even worth speaking to you? You know what I mean? Like, I'll give an example. When I first saw all of you, I was like, oh my God, these are all really artsy people. I'm wearing a sweater and a wool jacket. It's like, what? Look at Chipo's closet. It's so nice.
We're all
It's so
performing,
nice.
Jake. We're all performing.
I don't even have a door on my closet. No, but yeah, so the Treaty 6 Collective came from that, because a lot of TikTok native stuff, it's really traditional and whatnot, but a lot of natives aren't a lot of them have rejected certain things, and
There's a diversity of First Nations people.
And because of the groups, because of how my life panned out, I've hung out with, pretty. I don't want to diss the people I'm hanging out with, but they're definitely on the lower economic scale. That's where I'm at, and that's the people I hang out with, and so that art community is exactly that. It's for the people who've been left behind by the institutions, because we don't need an institution to tell us what's good. I've been in classes with a bunch of other different types of people, and I've written something better than they all have without even following the rubric. So the institution is not the be all end all. This is exactly like way back in France in the salon, people getting rejected and shit. It's just racism now. That's all it is. And so, I'm not talking about, no, I don't know. It's just creating a community, because there's no community. Who are you going to show the work to? Who's going to care? It's got to be a self-sustaining thing. And yeah, it's the machine. There's a machine over here, so we might as well create a machine for ourselves. Something that we can actually fit into, instead of having to force our way, breaking the machine.
Yeah.
And that's the collective.
Do you guys want to share a little bit more about the festival, and if you already know, because I saw there was a call for it, and then was there? I think I saw something online. I'm not sure. Yeah, like, what are you envisioning, even if it's not yet in form? What do you envision for the festival? Yeah, if there's more that you want to share. And we also spoke a little bit the other day on the phone about funding, and I think that even though, how can I say this? I'm trying to put this thought together. Even though there's restrictions and barriers that are very apparent, there's perhaps opportunity in the funding level to support this project, and that's, I think, like a good first step to kind of fuel it up in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to talk a little bit to those things, just like what do you envision for the festival, and the other thing is just a comment, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting about the festival is it started off with me going like, I want to perform my music somewhere. And then I started getting people involved. And then it's honestly not even my collective. It's not my festival anymore. Like I said, it is a machine now. There's so many people involved. We were talking to a tribe called Red. We were talking to their managers. I got in touch with the Little Baby's manager in New York. There's so many people that just came out of the woodwork. So I can't even call it mine anymore. You know, it's its own thing. Because we got one of our painters who's like, hey, Jake, can I use the collective name for this? Because I want to do this and I want to use some of the artists. I was like, yeah, go ahead. That's what the collective is for.
So maybe explain who else was supposed to be involved.
Well, we have a bunch of artists. There's I don't want to give too much because it's quite top secret. It's super top secret. I can't.
Yeah, you don't have to say. Maybe you can just say music and performance,
Yeah,
and where it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it'll be in
how
Cold
is the
Lake.
community being built around it?
Well,
That's
it'll be in Cold Lake for Alberta. We got in touch with the city council. We've been in touch with the mayor. They've been providing the venues, and everybody's really working for us, working with us. And we're gonna have performance artists, visual artists, poets, probably some comedians. Now that we have more time to plan, we're gonna try to get every single type of artist up in here, because the goal of the festival is that, you know, maybe a 14-year-old kid who, you know, his dad does coke and his mom's an alcoholic, maybe he walks into the festival and he sees Ariel doing something just fucking wild, and he's like, you know what, I didn't know we could do that. I didn't know I could do that. I'm going to start researching this stuff, and I'm going to do that. That way it becomes a self-sustaining machine. Do you see what I'm saying? The festival is the beginning, is the first cog. It's that. Because the institution self-sustains itself. It's hard to break the systems. So we have to create new systems. And that's the system I was creating. That's the festival. It's for the kids, man. It's for the children. It's for the generations.
Amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, Jake. Thanks a lot. Ariel, do you want to add anything or say up anything else about I don't know, your own, I don't know, experience or practice?
I mean, I think I also wanted to I also wanted to hear more from Jake of like what festivals like that need, because that was another question that came from this discussion panel, is like what do these communities need from organizations and institutions?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah, that's my question.
I need some love.
Need some love.
I need love.
Jake.
I need love.
Stop.
Right, it's simple. It's concise, to the point, man. I don't need bureaucracy. We don't need bureaucracy.
But like, okay, even like in practical terms, like what could you ask for, like
money? I was gonna say
money.
love again. I don't know, man. Everybody knows the answer. Everybody always knows the answers.
Opportunity, money, promotion.
Yeah, it's everybody knows. But that's what I mean. That's the system. People can't even say it outright because there's so much paperwork. There's so much people you gotta go. You can't even say we need money because it's not gonna happen. You know, everybody always knows. Everybody knows the answers to the question.
Yeah. Yeah, and space, right? Like, I think this particular space that Live organizes is great because it's creating space to ask the questions and to voice the concerns and to share and to reflect together. And it's really wonderful to hear both of you and what you're doing. And I feel that I can understand where you're coming from, even though I'm probably foreign to the experience. but yeah, it sounds really, really fantastic. So I hope that from here we can keep talking about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. So many people watching. Okay. We're going to move on to the next presentation, conversation. I don't even want to call it presentation, but conversation, perhaps, introduction with Reiko and James. Reiko and James are both artists and curators, and they are roommates. I think it's important. And they're collaborators, and they have been doing different projects together. One of them, the Hatch Gallery at UBC, and they're gonna share probably more than what I'm gonna say, but some of the community building strategies and experimental curating that they've been doing there. They're gonna maybe talk about fluidity in the art world and in the kind of relationship between art, performance, and life in the nightlife and in the queer local scene. So I'm just going to introduce them now. James Albers is an emerging artist, curator, writer, organizer, and performer based on the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. Their practice often takes a collaborative and community-oriented approach, as they see this as a proactive way to create new meaning from their lived experiences. James is concerned with exploring the queer potentials of revisionist histories and chooses to believe in the magic of fiction. Recently, James has been thinking through the truth that a perfect lie may hold. And Reiko Inouye is an emerging artist, curator, organizer, and settler guest on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. They recently received their Bachelor of Fine Arts in Bachelor of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies, that was hard, from the University of British Columbia, and were nominated to the BMO One Art competition. In 2020-21, they were the director of the student-run Hatch Art Gallery on UBC Vancouver's campus. Reiko's practice often concerns himself with a theories of queer world building, space making, affirmativity, and movement. The relationality and space between objects, people, places is what interests Reiko the most, and the modes through which communication occurs. Her most recent research has explored correspondence, lineages, personal ephemera, and temporality as it relates to identity formation. So help me welcome Reiko and James.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Wait, we should just be talking about this one.
Yes.
Okay, so
we're gonna do a little split screen situation. So we're gonna be sharing some slides on James's computer, I believe.
Yeah.
And then we'll be talking here.
Yeah, so we'll be talking in like Reiko's screen, and then so you can still see us while we're going through this presentation. And yes, this is like more of like a formal presentation, but Reiko and I are just like inherently not very formal people. So you'll just see how it goes. Oh wait, I realized that my laptop is low battery. I need to get my charger.
We're gonna go grab a charger real fast. Oh my god. Bear with us.
It's nice that we can still see both screens, even though the presentation is playing. So
can you see James's screen?
Yeah.
We have a beautiful view of our soda stream, but
it looks like a speaker from here.
Oh, be. It could be. Sparkling water fuels all of our work apparently. But okay.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay. Well, we titled our presentation "Listening to Communities, Care and Curating," and I think that's just like a really good way to kind of just encapsulate what we will be talking about today in relationship to this talk and everyone else's performances. Okay, do you want to start?
Yeah. So this is a little bit about us. In context, I'm Reiko, this is James. I guess just contextualizing why we're asked to be here. We are both recent graduates from UBC. James got their BFA in visual arts and art history, a double major, and I got my major Bachelor of Arts in interdisciplinary studies, but we did a lot of work together through the visual arts program. Yeah, but we both just graduated in the spring of this year, 2021. So we are in our freshly squeezed era. We are in the like kind of in between stages of coming out of the communities of student artists and I guess the communities that we've started to grow in Vancouver. Do you want to talk about research interests in life?
Yeah, well, I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess like with this slide, I just wanted each of us to like give a little bit of context of like what we, were interested in like in school and also outside of school. So I guess just like, yeah, general topics, kind of like I said in my bio that I'm interested in are like queerness, community building. I'm also interested in like the potentials of like the technological realm and also how like queerness exists within digital spaces, technologies, and like how to queer the way we understand technologies. But that's like future practice, need like more research into that. And I guess, yeah, like, while I was in school, I really, really focused on like engaging with the communities that I felt a part of while being a student. So like the main one being the like art community, and like I felt like it was really important to like be an active like member of that community. So I actually spent a lot of the time with the Visual Arts Students Association trying to like just like foster a larger sense of a community, because when I first came, like the faculty, at least like connection among the students kind of felt a little bit disjointed, and I really wanted to provide like a space for like people to just like socialize. So when I was like event organizing, and actually I eventually became the president of the Visual Arts Students Association, I was really, really focused on just creating like a social space where students could feel like they could meet each other, greet each other, feel like they're a part of something that actually has like palpability to it. Like I don't really know how else to say that, but like basically to just like actually create a sense of community, because I felt that
didn't exist.
But that didn't didn't really exist at the beginning. And that's just for whatever reason, I feel like especially like studying arts within like a university setting, it's just like it's a smaller program,
It's a small program. It's a small program.
And like, but therefore the potential to have like a close-knit community was like better. So that's kind of like what I wanted to focus on while I was like in school, in terms of like community engaged practices. And then naturally, I feel like that led both of us in like our own specific ways to becoming interested in being the directors of the student-run gallery, which is the Hatch Art Gallery, which is making up like, which will take up most of the presentation today. We are also preceded by two guests here, Yasmin Meili Kalora and Gil Torres. So a lot of this, like our love goes out to you. A lot of the work that we did is like following the work that both of them did. So just like really need to shout them out. Like, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We love you both.
Yeah, and then I don't know. Do you want to like say a little bit?
Yeah. About the Hatch or about?
Just like your interest.
Yeah, I guess
your story.
Yeah, similar to James. I guess through school, I really explored, I guess I was very interested in identities and like the in-betweens of identities. I think that's a big crossover that James and I have both explored in our practices. So what does it mean to take up the space in between? I find myself between a lot of communities, whether that's like race and sexuality and gender and all of these different things. And so exploring what does that space look like, and I guess what is the power there, because I think that's often used to disempower people, because it's like a space that may institute a lack of belonging, but I think there is a lot of power that is held with being between, and crossover to bridge communities essentially. So yeah, I guess a lot of my practice explored that through performance and photo and video work. And I guess in terms of organizing, similar to James, I also joined VASA. I joined VASA a little bit later, organizing for the Visual Arts Student Association. And then with the Hatch Art Gallery, I guess that was exciting and important opportunity to be able to organize not only within the student body, I guess, for events, but organizing shows and how to, I guess, represent artists in the ways that we wish that maybe we were represented throughout our degrees. And again, kind of entering that in-between community between student artists and artists in the city, and what that really means and looks like. Yeah, I think that's it. And I guess, yeah, involved in dance communities in Vancouver, and queer communities and artists, BIPOC artists, that we will talk about more later, I guess.
Yeah. I guess like the one thing that I want to say about the communities that we engage with is that for me, I feel like it's kind of shifting slightly for myself now that I am my freshly squeezed post-grad version of James. Because like before, I felt like I was thinking a lot more about how I am situated within like a community setting, within an institutional setting. And that led me to like want to become like a leader and like a community organizer kind of thing. But now that I'm out of school and like I'm entering like, you know, general culture and like the public realm and like the professional realm, whatever that means, haven't quite figured it out. But I find myself wanting to be in a lot more of like a learning stage again. So yeah, I feel like throughout the summer we've been doing a lot. We've just been engaging a lot more with like the queer scene in all of its facets. So like the drag scene, and then also like voguing culture and the way that that exists in Vancouver today. And whatever, yeah, just like the queer nightlife scene, because like I feel like there's always been a huge connection between queerness in culture and then like alternative spaces and like underground spaces and like spaces that are slightly outside of like the direct, you know, spotlight. So yeah, and then entering this, it just feels like I'm much more of like a learner and like growing and a listener within this community as well. Even though we consider ourselves a part of it, there's still so much like positioning to do within this community, and we'll talk about that more. But anyways, I guess we'll talk a little bit about the Hatch Art Gallery and like what that space was.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So the Hatch Art Gallery is located on UBC campus. It's in the AM. It's owned by the Alma Mater Society of UBC. So I guess a little bit of context for what the space historically has been used for. It kind of exists as a very unique physical space, but also just like the potential that it holds, because it's the only student-run gallery, student-operated gallery fully. So every year there's 2 directors who fully are in charge of running a 9-month-long exhibition schedule and running the physical exhibition space, as well as operating and maintaining a permanent art collection. The coughing is really stressful. Like, it throws off, like, where's that coming from? But yeah, so there's a lot, I guess, in terms of roles, it's very complex because it's a lot of tasks asked from the two students who are in charge, as well as in terms of experience. I feel as undergrad students, it's very much like you go in like way over your head, and it's definitely a lot of learning process to figure out how you want to do that. But that is historically, I guess, the Hatch's context on UBC campus, but it also is one of the only spaces that really allows student artists to show, because I think that's like a huge barrier. Access as you're a student artist, right? You can apply for shows in the city and stuff, but it's very difficult to get in and like know what are they looking for, like how to actually apply. And so I think that's where the Hatch is really, really beautiful and powerful, because it holds potential for students to really practice what does it mean in a safe environment. What does it mean to show? How do I learn how to install? How do I learn to write about my work? How do I learn to talk about my work and present that? So it's kind of like a experimental stomping grounds, and I think that's really like special. And so we were really excited for the opportunity to be able to run the Hatch together. But I guess our year was a bit different because we ran it during the height of COVID, and so the year that we got it, the physical space actually was required to be closed for the majority of the year, and so we had to kind of switch gears along with, I guess, all other art institutions of like what does it look like to run an art gallery that doesn't have a physical space. And I think that really geared our curatorial approach for sure, of like really questioning like what does a gallery really offer other than like a name, right? I think that like facade a little bit was poked through of the institution itself of an art gallery when COVID hit, because it's like, okay, we are a name, but we can no longer offer this physical space to show. So what can we really offer the artists that we're trying to represent, and like actually follow through on that. But do you want to talk a little bit about, I guess, the ways that we...
Yeah. So it's like, obviously we had this like spatial barrier where we didn't want to, like risk anything by having students like come to the space. Like students weren't coming to campus, so we elected to do all of our programming and exhibitions online still, because what we really wanted to do was to still like use what we did have, which is like this name that's somewhat respected within at least the university sphere, to support like emerging artists, creatives, students that go to UBC as well. And I think what we were thinking about a lot was particularly how do we, as directors of the space, like relate to the voices that we want to represent, that we want to support, and kind of like, and then thinking through that, what role should we play in the curation of the exhibition? And I think what we're gonna do next is we're just gonna kind of like briefly go through, like very briefly, like 1 or 2 minutes for each project, each of the projects that we like did, and then just kind of like talk and then answer this question that I wrote saying, how did we as directors of the space position ourselves alongside these projects, and what roles do we end up taking? Because I think that that's really what we want to highlight today, is about like, how do I put this another way? Yeah, kind of just like, how do we see our role as directors,
right? Yeah,
in relationship to these projects. So should we just like get started? Okay.
So yeah, I think our first exhibition that we did was called Inside a Print, and it was curated by Margaret Woodruff. And it had a culmination of Chipo Chipaziwa was also in this exhibition, actually. But it essentially was an art exhibition that was all femme printmakers. And so they, because we couldn't do a physical, I guess, exhibition, this was our first approach at doing something alternative. And so I think really trying to lean into the medium of printmaking. we produced a zine, and so we applied for a grant. I guess talking alongside the curator, we really worked to try to figure out like what is the best physical output to actually display this work. And so in an interesting way, I feel like this is a type of project that a normal year like exhibition space may not have shown in the same way, because it didn't it wasn't about the final works. And I think that's something interesting that we think about physical art spaces, right? It's all about the performance of the finished like beautiful product. And I think this year kind of allowed us to show the messy behind the scenes process of making works. And so we did take like Instagram takeovers and behind the scenes where the artists would take over for a day and show the process of their work and their printing and their research process. Very like research heavy. And then all of their research kind of culminated into a final zine that we hand printed and mailed off to students and people who had subscribed to the project. And so I think that was a really fun approach. But I think also it was fun to work with the curators to put that together. But I think the cool thing was like, I think we realized that was something that we maybe wouldn't have been as open to or done if we hadn't worked with, I guess, the artists directly. And had a year to, I guess, present work in that sort of way.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I remember with this project, I felt more like hands off in this project. Like I feel like
we were just like, supporting.
And like the only way that I was hands on was quite literally like
Holding
they asked me to help fold the zine. So I was like, absolutely, like we'll do like whatever you need. Like we need people like getting paper cuts. We'll do it.
We can do it. Yeah.
So that was I feel like you did pretty well.
Yeah. Next. We can go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this next project was entitled Feasting Fools at the Foot of the Mountain. And this one was actually collaboratively curated by Reiko and myself, Melanie Friedman, Yelena Markovich, and Saidi, who are all UBC alumni as well, embodied performance artists. And so this was the second exhibition. And it was actually interesting because we kind of accepted this. When it came to us, it was more so in the form of a proposal. But we were really interested in like the ways that they wanted to interact with like performativity, especially through like the screen, and like it really aligned with kind of like what we believe, like basically the COVID restrictions. So it would also be an interesting commentary on that. But they actually did specifically ask us to help them curate a project. So we had definitely a more like hands-on role with this one, but it was specifically because they wanted us to help like have their ideas become situated within like
I guess their body of research
that they had
been doing.
And I remember this was actually kind of where I began my deep dive into tarot.
It was.
Because like I just like because it was based off of this film by a Chilean director. I'm blanking on his name. It's called The Holy Mountain, I believe. It's like a really like
Alejandro something.
Yeah. Sorry, my brain's like not working. But like it's a very like avant-garde film. I'm sure that like people, at least within like the art world.
Jodorowsky?
Yes.
Jodorowsky.
Yes, absolutely. But I don't even know.
I guess it was okay. This exhibition, it was loosely inspired by that film. But I guess exploring this idea of this parable essentially of like seeking enlightenment and climbing this mountain. And in the film, there's this mountain there's a like lodge at the bottom of the hill, and they can choose to go up this mountain and take the hard path, or they can like stay at the bottom because they basically got there. And it plays with tarot, plays with magic and enlightenment and all those things. But it was ultimately a very playful exhibition, exploring all of those topics. And because all the artists were like very open, fluid performance artists, I think it was a really collaborative approach to curating. I think they had asked us to kind of be a part of that, and so that was kind of a like honor to be able to work with them to kind of figure out how to present that work. And so it kind of culminated in a series of activations and like live streams, performances, and then interviews also. And podcast. Ariel actually was one of the interviewees of I believe Yelena's podcast, and that it culminated in the end into a like live Zoom party performance interactive event. And so that was really cool to be able to again approach an event in that way. It was our first Zoom live stream, but it was that was that. I think we can move on.
Really fun, collaborative.
Quickly, this was Black UBC BSU Student Art Show. Again, this was like really collaborative. The Hatch previously had never collaborated with the UBC BSU Black Student Union before, but I actually was in conversation with a friend who organizes with them, and I guess a little bit on like representation and all of these things. I feel like they had been reached out to a lot during I guess this past year for a lot of talks and different things, but in a very, I guess, like grabby identity way. And so I think that was something that like the Black Student Union was getting a lot of attention, but in maybe and platform, but in very like performative ways. And so we had been talking about that, and they wanted a space to show student artwork, because essentially they were just like, we want a space to be able to show like student artists and celebrate and be joyful and in community. And so this was a cool opportunity that we were able to really hands off just give, provide again space and money for them to internally find their own artist and organize the show. So we played a very background role in this, but allowed them to essentially use the online platform for them to put together their own show. So the co-presidents helped curate it, and it was just a cool opportunity to be able to work with them. But again, we played a very background role in terms of curating. They basically like organized most of it. And I would describe our role as almost like we would give advice when they needed it, and provide the platform and that kind of stuff, as we should. So and money and okay, so this one this was the annual Visual Arts Students Association show that is mandated to happen every single year at the Hatch. It's a collaboration between the people who are running the Hatch as well as the Visual Arts Students Association. And this show is very dear to my heart every year because like when I was the president, I curated it twice. So then I was really excited to kind of also be on the other end of it, helping to like direct it into the space. And, but again, like this community is very much for specifically the visual arts students at UBC. And therefore it's completely curated, completely organized by the Visual Arts Students Association every single year. And again, the Hatch plays like the role of providing space, providing the support, providing like, well, obviously our year was different because everything was online, but typically like they would help like with the install, teaching like artists how to do all that technical work, helping with like writing, the didactics, helping to like organize everything. But when it comes to like the actual art and the representation in the exhibition, and during that, it's usually led by the Student Association itself. And this year it was very interesting because for the exhibition, they actually wanted to recreate the physical space of the art gallery
digitally in a design software called Blender. And one of the artists who was part of the exhibition, her name is Erin Huston, like took the initiative to actually create that, and we were able to fund that as well. Yeah, and it was very interesting. It was really cool.
It
So
was
that exhibition was virtual or physical or both?
it was
virtual.
It was virtual, but they essentially like recreated the physical hatch space.
Yeah,
virtual.
in a virtual space.
We
I remember
don't have
seeing
this,
images. Yeah.
But it was really cool to see students take that on to really like build that world and approach to an online exhibition.
Exactly.
But
and it was called Terms and Conditions, kind of like referencing the like fine print of society, is how I would say.
So this was a zine that we collaborated on and produced with the SASC, which is the AMS Sexual Assault Support Center. And that is an ongoing kind of collaborative show that the Hatch has hosted in previous years. But because, again, we couldn't do a physical event, we talked a lot with the organizers, who are two of the leads, Joelle and Erika, at SASC, of like how we could kind of shift that gear to something else. And because a lot of the students involved in that are like poets and photographers and writers, we decided on doing a zine. And so that was really cool because they had not done that before. And again, we played kind of a very large support role just in mostly organizing and collating all of the works together and helping them kind of pull that together in a cohesive project. But all of the thematic curating and everything came from them, and I think it was a very like relatable exhibition theme. I don't know what I'm saying. My mind just blanked. Exhibition statement, thinking about survival through I guess COVID and that year, but kind of bringing together unity or community and experience of survivors, going from like grief and alienation and all of these, but also kind of the healing and joy that we find by sharing these stories of survival and coming back together, and kind of the resilience that we had built through this past year. And so I think it was a very, very vulnerable project with the artists that did present. But it was a cool, cool thing to see them pull together because they had never put together a zine before. And so again, it was we really just played a support role in aiding them pull that project together.
Exactly. Okay.
And then I guess Axia, this was just kind of an extension, I guess, of the Feasting Fools at the Foot of the Mountain. But we were in conversation with Melanie Friedman a little longer, who's one of the performance artists. And she led this series because, again, we were on an online platform. And so we were kind of like, why not overlap projects? We don't have this physical space, right, that we're fighting for. And so, again, I think it allowed us to be flexible, but like we can just run multiple things at once and have these going. So this was a really fun, playful embodiment workshop series that happened. We had 3 iterations of it that happened on Zoom and Facebook Live and different live stream platforms, but they were essentially different explorations of like embodiment during the pandemic and healing, and just moments of meditation essentially. And so that was a really cool way to I guess like commune and be present in a different way, because I think one thing we had been talking about was how much time we had spent on screens this past year, and kind of like this aversion,
and even
now, you know, this almost dread of like, oh my god, and not another Zoom meeting, and like just feeling sapped by this like you know, very complex relationship with all of our community and stuff is on screens, but how can we kind of like try to resituate a relationship with that, and be really present with one another.
Yeah.
So that was essentially what that workshop was about. Yeah, and they all exist online for people to come back to. So it felt like a little bit of a residency, which was cool because we haven't done really something like that before.
Yeah, mini little residency.
Little baby residency.
This project was very okay. So this was actually in collaboration with a specific course at UBC, which was Dr. Aaron Silver's Art History 300 Seminar in Canadian Art. And yeah, this one was actually done by my we were in conversation with Aaron Silver, the professor, all throughout like the summer, kind of talking about ways to kind of like integrate. Oh my god, actually, we didn't even talk about like permanent collection yet. Sorry, we're just like plugging in laptop chargers and stuff. It's actually the two laptops is kind of confusing, but anyways, yeah, basically what we did was we just like led like a research project into the histories of the AMS permanent collection, which is a multi-million-dollar art collection that the Hatch Gallery stewards for some reason. And it's always kind of been a how do I describe it? Like it's always kind of felt like it kind of existed in like the back burner of the minds of a lot of past directors, but that again did really shift with Yasmin and Keel. And then we tried to kind of like follow up in like enlivening the work that they had begun by initiating interaction with it through all the possible modes that we could. And we also thought this was a great opportunity to have like a graduate on like the 400 level seminar interact with this. So basically we did work very collaboratively with the professor to design a semester long-term project for each one of the students in the course to create. And they had the choice to do this collaboratively or independently. And yeah, it was a really interesting, and it was a really like awesome experience to be able to like take that, or because the role that I would say that we had in this project, but also in this course, was that we kind of felt like we were TAs all of a sudden, kind of like being like research assistants for all of the students, but also being students ourselves.
Yeah,
so that was a very interesting experience, but and a lot more institutionalized than like the other projects and stuff. But we still did want to mention it.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about that project, and leads into your project, I guess, was this idea that like we had an absurd amount of like access to all these juicy like documents through the archive of the AMS that had a lot of gossip, a lot of dirt, a lot of interesting stuff of the institution. And we kind of were like, there's just two of us, and we want to weed through this and kind of like maybe expose some things and question all of these things that we'd been faced with, and the problems again that students had been faced with for so many years, but there wasn't enough people. And we were like, how can we pull more people into that? And I think this class project was a really exciting way to kind of like pull in more support through our professors and fellow students to like dig through that together and kind of be like, here's all this, we have access to all this stuff, like let's just like share that and blast that and like get that out there, because again, that was something that a lot of we could kind of like share because we had access to it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And then there's like so many projects that we did. I often feel the need to talk about this one too in depth, but basically like my projects, because like each year both the director and the assistant director typically have like their own projects that they work on. And because I was the assistant director who typically is like the main steward of the permanent collection, I am designated to like curate a show around the permanent collection. And this was my version of that. which actually didn't contain any artworks from the permanent collection, and it was a deep dive into the archival documents and kind of like the stories and the histories that they told of the permanent collection, maybe like the idiosyncrasies within these stories and like things that like, you know, I was basically just interested in like gossip. So basically I worked with like a group of like, I think there was 12 total volunteers who actually produced content for the show. And they each produced like works that were inspired specifically by documents pertaining to works in the permanent collection. And we kind of like pasted them together in this like 2-hour long performative event that I entitled The Slumber Party, because the concept was that we were all coming together for a slumber party to gossip about this project that we like found. So in that way, it really did kind of blur the line between fact and fiction, like the truth of history and like kind of like performativity of history, and like it was just very interesting. But anyways.
Yeah, and I also don't have to talk about this project too much, but I guess for my curatorial project, it was titled Director's Project Final Notes, and it essentially was not a project. And yeah, I guess my decision towards the end was I had been digging through a lot of, again, archival materials and research, and I went the directorial, I guess, lineage route. So instead of looking at the works in the collection, my interest, I think, was really rooted in all of the institutional problems we faced. And at working for the AMS and at a university and all of these things that the two students kind of face every year. And this is like a reoccurring problem of lack of support, lack of funding, lack of, yeah, essentially just not actually supporting the students that are running the space. And so these problems get passed down. I started to like look into the history of the directorial teams, kind of as a family lineage, thinking about these are, you know, the people that came before me and we're all, you know, connected through that way. And so I did a series of interviews with previous directors and had tracked down, I guess, like the past like 10 years of directorial teams, and had a lot of just like crying sessions of kind of problems that they had faced that we also faced. And I think there's a lot of encouragement there of kind of like, these are obviously bigger institutional problems beyond us that, yeah, we were facing. But the project culminated in essentially just a refusal. And I think that was at the time my way of coming to terms with all of these things of like, I'm not going to produce another show under this this kind of structure. And so I released a series of statements that kind of tracked this history as like a form of like the research that I had been doing. And we recorded a final interview that was our way of kind of hopefully like saving or preserving like our oral storytelling of our experience that hopefully gets passed on to future generations of directors, so that makes that a little bit easier. But it was not a show, and so I think that was a little scary to produce because I felt insecure about that. But in some ways, I think that was my most honest truth at that point of like working under that institution. So yeah, that's a little bit about that project. And I guess this went on a wild ride.
Yeah, as usually
thank you for bearing with us. I guess, yeah, our main wrap-ups and takeaways, I guess, through a lot of these projects, and I guess through the experience of running the Hatch, one of the biggest things we really realize is like kind of where we see our role as organizers and curators and community, I guess, like builders and leaders, is that's something we really have to do. One, internally, like we can only really represent communities that we are a part of, and we have to be in community in order to represent these communities. And I think that's really, really important notes for like institutions to take note on. But and that often a lot of the things that we are involved in that happen are outside of the institutional setting. So leaving the school behind, but also galleries as kind of a gatekeeping institution. And then I guess just like taking a more back burner approach to organizing and working with artists that I think often like we think that are like the biggest support that like curators can provide and spaces can provide and institutions can provide is listening and giving money and like just like space and like all of these
basically
things.
all in agreement.
Yeah.
With, like,
what Ariel and Jake also said. It's like these are we do know that these are like kind of the answers, but I guess like a role as a curator and leader is to be able to hopefully as best support the artists that are doing the work and are a part of community and culture. But I guess that's the main
yeah. The presentation was just our really long that institutions like
I think what's nice to highlight for me, and we will have time to talk more at the end, hopefully, is that in a way your curatorial practice took a very performative role, and it was very fluid, and that, you know, I think UBC has that double challenge: one, that's a small program, and two, that is so removed geographically from the city and is so distant. And in a way, so you had that, and then the fact that COVID happened at the same time, which with its challenges, it also allowed you to integrate a lot of communities, I think. So yeah, thank you. That was really insightful, and it was great to revisit some of those projects. So we can talk more at the end. Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to listen to people, and then we can do a little break so that we can stretch and drink water and go to the bathroom, or whatever you need. But I'm gonna introduce Chipo. Chipo Chipaziwa is going to be presenting on Blackness and finding the center/focus. These are some notes that I took about things that we spoke about. Being a student of color and of a cultural minority at the university, and offering some comments on curatorial experiences with local organizations that how perhaps sometimes diversity is used as a token. Chipo Chipaziwa is an interdisciplinary artist living on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. She was born in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. She has lived in Malaysia, Switzerland, New York, Zimbabwe, and currently resides here in Vancouver. Chipaziwa is a performance artist who works both independently and collaboratively. She is a part of the performance art collective Cuerpo, founded by Guadalupe Martinez. Chipaziwa's work addresses the duality of subjectivity and objectivity, the notion of identity and its fluidity, and the performativity of the African female body. So welcome, Chipo.
Sorry, I was still on mute. Okay, hello. Hi. Okay, so I'm gonna talk. So basically, I came here to Vancouver. I came from Zimbabwe, and I completed my undergrad study at the University of British Columbia, where I majored in visual arts. And in my 4 years, when I was completing my studies, I came to realize how small the non-white bodies were within that university, and especially within the visual arts department. And I find that now that it's been 2 years since I've graduated, and I'm kind of at a loss as to how to continue on my artistic practice, but just also where is it going to go? A part of me can't help but ask how different would it have been if I would have had a Black instructor. So one of my favorite pieces that I did in my time in university, and a piece I find myself coming back to, is titled Chipo Chipaziwa's Artist Statement. And I despise artist statements. I think that they're kind of redundant and in a way very much gives a nod to like the institution. And basically I wanted to do a riff on that and just make essentially the whole performance piece an artistic statement. So in that, I did a performative lecture where I put myself in conversation with Francis Fanon, and all I wrote for people to see when they were going through the pamphlet was audience members are encouraged to listen. There's a whole video of it. It's like 20 minutes long, but I'm not going to play that. I'm just going to kind of read some excerpts of it. Throughout my being, throughout my practice, throughout my performances, I have realized that I'm not a neutral subject, object, material. I embody my race, I embody my gender, and I embody my trauma. It has been ingrained into the deepest corners of me that my own subjectivity was never, is never, and will never be enough. I need you, I need your presence, and I need you to acknowledge, to validate me. I do not look like you. I am Black in relation to your non-Blackness. I am Black in relation to this whiteness. So that's all I'm going to read from that. But basically, I still find the words that I wrote 2 years ago to be, if not more, relevant in this day and age. I think about last summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, and also with everything going on within a pandemic and how a lot of protests and awareness was raised on social media. I still have yet to have like a final consensus as to how I felt with people showing their support or allyship through online, especially with Blackout Tuesday, where people posted just Black squares on Instagram as a means to validate Black lives. And this might be controversial, but I didn't really find it helpful. If you Google it, you can even read some articles as to how it actually was kind of problematic and did more harm than good, but I'm not going to lecture everyone on that today. And basically, I've just found that, 2 years being an undergrad graduate and, having to work and having to, have a job that's like outside my artistic practice, and trying to understand who Chipo is as not a student anymore, but just as a worker in Vancouver. I found that when I have been reached out to art organizations, and this has even happened in like non-art organizations, everybody loves the D word. And when I say the D word, I'm referring to diversity. And I feel like people just kind of put it in there, and they don't necessarily want diversity to take place. They want to perform diversity. And given the experiences that I've had this past summer, I can see that that's very much aware and live within this city, and something that I want to see in Vancouver, the city that I live in, the city that I make art in, and in my communities as well, is people taking a step beyond and actually implementing the practices that they so highly speak of and that they believe that they're doing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chipo. Do you have do you have any other excerpts from your paper handy?
I mean, yes. Okay, maybe I can read.
It's really beautiful just to hear you read. Maybe if you want to read one or two more excerpts, and then we can move on. I think it says a lot in itself, and it's nice to listen.
Okay, I'll read one other portion from it. And as long as the Black woman is among her own, she will have no occasion except in minor internal conflicts, except in major internal conflicts, to experience her being through others, the moment of being for others, others, other, and other. Regardless of what sort of art Chipo is going to make, the appearance, the classifiers of Chipo's body will always be part of the discourse. Whenever Chipo comes into contact with someone else, the question of value, of merit arises. The question is always whether she is less intelligent than you, Blacker than you, less respectable than you.
Thank you. I think that one question that for me always comes up in my position as instructor at the university, and that I think that it has come up in your presentation as well as in Ariel and Jake's, but I think it's important for institutions and organizations to really, and for all of us as members of the art world and the community and the education system, has to do with how to truly not necessarily change or radically replace, but at least to integrate and expand the ways in which the language we use, the ways in which we learn, the ways in which we present, the ways in which we understand knowledge, to really, because it has to do with what we were saying before. Like, we can talk about diversity, we can change the bibliography of a class, we can include artists or folks from different cultures and backgrounds, but in the end, if we're still repeating the same format and performing the same traditions from academic traditions and Eurocentric traditions, there's really nothing going to happen. So I think that's a good, that for me, that's always a really important question. And when I teach in my class, and many of you have taken it, I think I try to really learn about that and change that. So that's something that we can maybe touch base upon later on. But it's one topic and question that I'm really interested about that has come up, and some of the strategies that Reiko and James have presented, I think, also touch upon that. So why don't we take a break, 5-minute break to stretch and have water, a cup of tea, and we come back and we'll listen to Pegah's presentation, and then we'll watch the performances. Okay, hello again. Okay, next we're gonna listen to Pegah's presentation and conversation account. I don't know what to call it. I'm gonna briefly introduce Pegah. So Pegah Tabassinejad is an interdisciplinary artist with interests in creating intermedial performances, interactive performances, cyber performances, digital multi-channel video installations, and city projects. She has been working on the notion of presence and absence in her art practice. She has been exploring the gap between the real and the virtual here and there, and researching the absence within the two worlds. For this, she's also questioning the boundaries of private and public space. She's interested in the aesthetics of CCTV cameras, small laptops with tiny green lights being on, and the internet. She's always working with a wide range of performance and is addicted to wandering in the cities. She holds an MFA from the Interdisciplinary Arts at Skszentmihalyi University and a BA in stage directing from University of Tehran. She has studied visual art at Assad University of Tehran and contemporary art in Paris at Conservatoire de la Danse. She has been taught various studio and seminar classes. seminar classes and led many workshops internationally, as well as teaching acting, performing movement at the University of Art in Tehran. Some of her international projects include Winter Interior Adults How, Digital Theater, Game, Interactive Performance Art at Aliha Gallery, Monitoring Tehran at Tada X04, a multi-channel video, at the Tehran Annual Digital Art Installation, and just to name a few, the Charisma Contemporary Dance at the Bush Festival. Pegah is a mid-career artist. She's going to be talking about re-emerging and coming in and out of communities, about diaspora, and rhizomatic models for restoring community. So welcome, Pegah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Yeah. Thank you, guys. This is so cool. Hello. So my name is Pegah Tabassinejad. I'm very, very grateful to be here at this panel and meeting with these beautiful artists and hearing your stories. I think we're sharing things in common, and I really appreciate what you shared with us today. I've learned a lot, and I hope that in the future we can all help each other, and I think that's probably the reason for this kind of panels as well. I'm some kind of a re-emerging artist to the city of Vancouver, which I moved in 2007, and by re-emerging to this place, which I was not for a while around because I'm a freelance artist and I was like traveling a lot. I wanted, based on our discussions before, I wanted to talk about this, but then because of talking a lot with members of, artists from the community, I have to tell you about that when I'm talking about my community, I'm talking about art community of Iranian people. So when I've talked to them, I think I found a lot of issues over there that I prefer to talk about them or us in general. And my presentation is not cool at all like yours, like my great people who were here. I feel better like when I'm writing, so I'm going to read. It will take only 10 minutes, but I would love to talk to you guys during the conversation. But first, I'm going to read from the things that I wrote. Okay. John Austin was an ordinary language philosopher who is credited with initiating the study into performatives. Ordinary language philosophers tend to collapse the use-meaning distinction and replace it with the notion that the meaning of a word is its use. His project theorized how speech acts do or mean things in ways other than generating true and false sentences. Although each sentence may be said to be true or false, sentences do more than provide true or false pictures of the word. For Austin, a performative utterance was a speech act that creates events or relations in the word. An example is when a bride or groom say "I do" at a wedding, they may then actually become married. The performativity of words is happening in between a speaker and a listener. Imagine the speaker as a performer and the listener as the audience. Imagine the speaker, the performer, as an emerging artist, and the listener, the audience, as the society. The emerging artists have to find a way to emerge into society, and this mainly happens through the words and the language. the language of the speaker and the language of the listener. The problem arises when these two parties are not using the same language. Then one has to use the others. My question here is that what kind of performance is happening in this situation? How do words of a different language used by one party can affect the whole performativity of the words uttering and receiving in between them? And how this performativity affects the identity formation process of the emerging artists. My focus in this talk is on Iranian artists who are living and working or not working as artists here in Canada, mainly here in BC, here in the Vancouver area. They are coming from there to live here, so they have to speak the language of here. They have to communicate with the listeners, the audience, the society, through a language that is not theirs. They have to find a way to prove their artistic identities here to be included. So they are trying to utter the right words and hope that their words will be received and have the right performativity. But the performativity that is hoping to happen is dependent on both speakers and listeners. I would like to add some examples here that I've been collecting from the Iranian artist community, and I have to say that for this topic, my focus was not only on performer artists, but collecting data from artists of various disciplines. A professional illustrator, 43 years old, who has moved here in 2018, told me about this brief session he had with his client from a well-known organization, and he couldn't compete with the speed of words in that session. He had to be a listener, a perfect listener, in order to create a body of work for the organization. But the speaker was speaking very fast, and he was only getting anxious. I've asked him if he mentioned his problem in the meeting, and he said no, because he thinks the speaker was only speaking passionately about what he wanted, and that was not his problem. But what really happened was that he might get only 50% of those words, and that will affect the whole dynamic of work, the result, and continuity of the projects. A professional senior visual artist in his late 60s who has moved here in 2007 is very disappointed about not being successful in getting any funds from the city, the province, or the country. He is an established artist with an honorary PhD from Iran, but he is not familiar with writing in another language, and specifically in writing grants. He told me that 1 or 2 times someone from the community helped him to write grants which were not successful, and he's still trying to find the right person to write grant proposals for him. This artist was running his art gallery in North Shore for 6 years and had many exhibitions with his students in Vancouver. An emerging artist in her 30s who moved here in 2016 and is teaching painting to the Iranian community is not willing to teach to others who cannot speak Farsi. I was surprised that she's not considering a great majority of people and makes her target very small, because I could witness that she's fluent in English. Her point was that she's afraid that she wouldn't be able to have the best performance in another language. I have many examples and cases that I can talk about, but don't want to move towards a sentimental approach. I wonder if we can use Austin's performative utterance theory here to say that the one that cannot participate well enough in the speech act cannot create any event or relations or performativity, therefore cannot be included as an artist. This hegemonic model in the art that emphasizes articulation and depends on using words in papers, in grants, in artist statements, in artist talks, in artist websites, in contemporary arts, in performing arts, excludes an important section of immigrant artists. What I'm trying to question here is that to what extent does the performative utterance can affect Iranian artists' identities? This is an important question, as this is vital performativity that has to be conveyed through words and the Iranian artists' identities are dependent on it. And I wonder to what extent the artists who are not included will try to be included. And I wonder how much effort they can put into this emergence until they quit. And I wonder, how do we define their milieu, their territory to work as artists? The immigrant artists are emerging artists who might not be in their 20s or early 30s. An immigrant emerging artists might be an established artist who with years of experience who can be an asset here, but they have a journey in front of them to be included. However, most of these emerging Iranian artists that I've met during the past years, whether working professionally or not, are having the experience of not feeling included, even after years of working in their own field. So why should a performing artist, an artistic director of a company, a tenure-track university teacher, a freelance visual artist, a freelance musician, an art scholar, and so on, who is working professionally within the art community, feel that they are not included? The answer might reveal itself by questioning to what extent a minority can be included within majorities. In what scope are Iranian artists participating in the art field of Canada? I think that is an important question to consider while we are in conversation with art organizations. When we're talking about minorities, are we talking about excluding them with titles, territories, special opportunities, special labels, etc.? Or are we talking about including them? When we are in conversation with art organizations, we should talk about statistics and how updated ones can be helpful to help with the emergence of immigrant emerging artists and help them through their process. We need to include the artists and help them towards that, or we turn most immigrant artists to other professions or jobs. We turn them to depressed, excluded, alienated, or even angry people who couldn't be included. And this has a huge effect on their identity. Another topic that's worth considering is that the identity formation process is not only evident between the majority and minority groups, but also within the minority groups themselves through the divisions in gender, age, class, geography, etc. I would like to discuss briefly how the artistic identity formation process can be affected by the notion of minorities within minorities. Minority groups try to preserve their collection identity through those essential characters that they claim to form their collective identity and build a protective shield towards those who have the qualities that are different from most in that group. Minority groups themselves are not entirely homogeneous groups and do in fact harbor cleavages within themselves. As a result, we witness the acts or non-acts that would lead to the alienation or exclusion of the minorities within minorities. As an example, a female artist or a senior artist who is not included in the majority might not be included in its own community as well. This intersectionality can affect not only their identity formation, but also their artistic aspect. I would like to wrap up by mentioning that there is so much good stuff is happening within the Iranian art community. So many of them are involved professionally within the art world of Canada. But I still think there are many artists there that need help to be included in both minority and majority communities of art. I also think there are great opportunities for us to be heard or participate in the art communities, such as this platform, which I'm really grateful for it. But we need to be heard more. We need to be involved more. As an artist, I can only raise awareness by bringing up these self-observations and questions. However, answering the questions such as what do communities want from organizations, requires a collective thinking process with the Iranian artist community, organizations, and other artists and art communities who are willing to help to facilitate this process. Thank you all for listening to my words. I hope my words had a performativity reflection. Thank you.
Wonderful, Pegah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very great listening to you, and as you mentioned at the beginning, I think some of the questions and things you were pointing to, we briefly touched on it, right? The question that you're talking about for the Iranian and Persian community, it also applies for others, and I can relate totally.
Yeah.
I think many of us can probably relate to what
I'm
you
glad.
said.
I'm glad.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Well, thank you for all the wonderful presentations and sharings and conversations. It's been very insightful and rich and generating, I think. Next, we're going to see two performances. First one with Chipo, and then one by Ariel. And after that, we're going to have some time for comments and questions among the participants and the audience. So I'm really looking forward to the next 40 minutes. Chipo's performance is untitled, and when she's ready, we're going to give her the virtual room. Thank you, Chipo, for a beautiful and powerful performance. Next, we're going to watch Ariel's performance. I don't know if the title is still Pulse. Maybe she'll tell us later. But I will leave her the room. Let us know if you need anything for setup, Ariel.
We're just setting up the cell phone right now. It'll be maybe a minute or two.
Okay, great. Okay.
Said I was in the audience. Oh no, I'm right here.
Maybe you have to hold it if I'm
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you, Ariel. I don't know if you're there. They're probably reconnecting.
Thank you so much. You're awesome, man.
Beautiful. Thank you. Look at your face. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now I wanted to, and I'm amazed at how well we've done with timing. Now I wanted to open up some space for questions and conversation, be it among you participants or with the audience. I don't know how it will work, Brian, if people can type the questions or they can move to the other square.
Wait.
Ask question. They can.
Can I say something real
Yes.
quick before we start?
Mm-hmm.
I saw that a couple of people were whispering to me, and I just wanted, like, whoever you were whispering to me as I was doing that, I didn't see your messages. So I don't know if you want to whisper to me. They call it whispering on this app, I think, when you send someone a private message. So I don't know if you want to like shoot me that message again because it like disappeared. I can't have a way of backtracking.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, so we can open up the floor for questions or conversation or comments among us who presented or people who are watching and listening. You can, I think, move yourself to this little square that says ask a question, and I don't know how it works. So please go ahead.
Yeah. I guess I just wanted to start off by saying that it was such a pleasure and privilege to like see everybody else's presentations and performances. Yeah, I really enjoyed them and I gained a lot from hearing all of your stories and perspectives. And yeah, I just wanted to say that just right off the bat.
Yeah.
Hi. I didn't get, I was thinking about it when we had our little break, and I wanted to, I missed like a big part of my introduction. And I feel like I wouldn't I don't know, it would stay stuck inside me if I didn't say it. So I'm gonna like introduce myself and then say my thank yous.
Go for it.
So yeah, just a little thing in Cree to say hello. Tansei, Wapi Miguan, Nitsagi-sun, Kinanaskuptanam. Yeah, we're from Treaty 6 territory. I just said hello, my name is White Feather. I'm grateful And thank you for having us, Res Kids. Thank you for having us, Res Kids, on this panel here. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you everybody for sharing. There we go.
Hey, don't touch. Don't
Okay.
touch. Don't touch.
Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you, Ariel. I just wanted to say your performance was amazing. It was really amazing.
Ilham is saying both performances were amazing. And I see someone on the question section.
Hello, this is Mandana.
Hi, Mandana.
And very lovely to be here. It's very refreshing, like really enjoyed it. I have a question for Pegah, and I was wondering, well, like you asked a lot of questions, but like, do you have any specific way in your mind for kind of like mobilizing or to kind of like push these questions a little bit further? What do you think about that?
Hello, Mandana. How are you? It's really hard after, all these years, kind of looking at both communities, like when I'm saying both communities, I mean Iranian communities and also Canadian communities, which like it's really a very specific term, what is Canadian community, artist community of Canada. It's really hard to imagine how you can change something within the art community of Iran, of Iranian artist community here in Canada. But what I'm thinking is that probably gathering together, and while I was like writing the paper, first I was thinking how statics is important, and we need some information about who are the artists who is coming right away to Vancouver or like Toronto or here and there, every single city, who is an artist in which field and where should they go and who they should talk to in order to connect and somehow feel like start from somewhere. Even though when as a re-emerging artist, you need to find somewhere and go there. So basically what happened to me was that I've tried to reconnect with my previous connections. Most of them didn't work. It was really interesting experience that it seems my Canadian experience, because when I moved to Canada, I had also some experience in Paris. So I do remember that I went to this place for dance. So by that time, I had dance performances in a couple of dance festivals in Europe. And I went to this dance place and they said, oh, that's great. Your resume looks great, but you don't have Canadian experience. So that's why I went to SFU and I've started to have like a Canadian experience and starting building something up. But by re-emerging to this place, I found that my Canadian experience, like passport, has been expired. Which is interesting. So then I'm not sure like what can we do, but what I'm sure is that we also have problems with as I've said, minorities within minorities, which is also another problem that we have. And first of all, we have to figure out that so we can become like a community together and kind of gathering together, like these kind of conversations is really helpful. So we can gather together and talk about it and make some decisions and then know what are our rights and then probably going forward with that. I see that Elham is writing something and I would love her to join us if she can talk. What they expect from artists. Yeah, that's another thing, how organization categorize artists and what they expect from artists. I can talk about this for a while, but I'm not sure if that's a good
I just
way
wanted
of me just talking.
to comment something. I don't know if it's pertinent to this particular point, Pegah. But I also, in my experience coming from Argentina, I think there's something in cultures that are not the first world. There's a precariousness to institutions and to the art world and to the art market. There's a precariousness that lacks a lot of resources and other things because of that, but it creates stronger communities in some ways, and it finds resources in other ways. And in my experience, at least in relationship, for instance, with education and our institutions in Argentina, is that they don't have as much money, a lot of them, and also they're not ruling the art world as much. And there's a lot of other spaces outside of the university, outside of the museums, that are very generating and that are very rich and that operate in parallel with the so-called main institutions and museums and so on. That's kind of something that I've really craved here in Vancouver. For instance, you would go to university in Argentina, which is free, but it's very basic. It's a refurbished factory. I went to university in a repurposed factory. That's where I did my BFA. Anyways, like people smoking in the classroom, just like so different. And
that's cool.
The thing is that there's a very, very large community of artists who are professors and get paid pennies, that teach in their studios, that have their own spaces where they host other artists and emerging artists, and there's a lot of community that grows there. And I found in my own experience as an artist here that generating those spaces has been really rich. And for instance, Cuerpo, the collective that was briefly mentioned in Chipo's bio, that many here have participated of or known. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of space, fertile space around the larger institutions to grow other kinds of communities. I'm not saying that that's why I'm not saying that it's the same thing that you're talking about, but a little bit of sharing what my experience has been and
yeah, for sure.
And
also
filling those gaps, perhaps.
Yeah.
Please, if someone else wants to, Manuel Pina Studio at UBC. Yeah, Mandana is talking about that. Yeah, there's Yasmin. And if anyone wants to ask questions or make comments, please hop on. It's totally casual at this point.
Hi. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Yasmin.
You all.
Hi, Yasmin.
Hi. That was so great to have some performance. I loved it. Chipo, that was so like, was that actually on Instagram or did you just make it look like it was an Instagram?
No, like the great tech. We have tech support Brian. He literally, like me and him were on here one night and I was like, can we make it look like Instagram? And then in 5 seconds, he like worked his magic. So yeah.
Yeah, he's good with that. He's had to help most of us do it. Cool. And Ariel, for some reason, I like had this great like comfort knowing there was someone there like watching you live to do it, like even just to film. Like it just, I don't know, it was like this perfect little grainy thing, and then just like seeing you like sleep kind of almost in the soil, but just like knowing that there was someone there present with you was like really nice. I don't know what that was, something about that. Also just like face in dirt, toes in dirt. Yeah. So good. Oh yeah, okay, I'm in the question box. I didn't really have a question. It was more just like I kind of dawned on me like halfway through the panels that like it's just so nice to see and hear people like yes, my peers, but also like younger artists and artists in like various different places in their careers that aren't just, you know, I don't know, that are often seen differently by institutions, having a space to just like talk about, you know, what they've done in the last 2 years or whatever. Like just having it just be that, I think was really nice. And I'm really glad that this kind of like situation was able to happen here. And I don't have a question. I just wanted to say hi.
Thank you, Yasmin. I think you took a part, you had a part on that happening, so.
Maybe, but it's like different to see it in practice, you know, like I wasn't really sure, like it was like in the idea it was like, of course, great, have people come and chat, but like actually kind of just sort of having a relay, and even just like a relay of what Reiko and James did at the hatch, and you're like, right, like that does have, and I think it is applicable in that type of like the care that goes in, especially when you're kind of in a more precarious stage in your career, perhaps, I think gets undervalued. And I think it's really nice to have a space to like for everyone to share that.
Nice.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Yasmin. Lian is saying, I miss in-person live performance, but thank you for these moments. I know I miss it too. Any other comments or thoughts? I feel like I talked a lot already, so I'm trying to give a space. Hello. While I was listening to all of you and I was taking some notes, I was fantasizing with creating some kind of learning institution that would use absolutely different kinds of pedagogies, but would hold a degree that could stand at the same level of any of the other universities. Just thinking about all the conversations that I think that each of them coming from your own personal experience and identities and context, but there was a lot of intersections in what you all spoke about and desires. So that's what I was left with. I was inspired to turn my camera around, inspired. Pegah, when you, there. Hello.
Oh, she turned her camera.
Oh.
Hmm.
Oh, I see. To see the window. Yeah.
We're outside too.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. A bird performed just now. Mm.
What did you want to ask me?
No,
Guadalupe?
when you started your presentation, you said that you were going to read, but that you had some thoughts regarding the other presentations. I was just curious if there was something that you wanted to share about that.
Oh yeah, maybe that can be also related to the answer that we can have for Mandana, because I was thinking probably I was thinking of a rhizomatic model that if we can create a rhizomatic model, then whatever happens and wherever it disconnects, the rhizomes can find each other and they can connect to each other and the model survives. It's probably it's like the system that we are creating. And I forgot your name.
Chipo?
No, the one with Ariel.
Jake.
Jake. Sorry, Jake.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, somehow I think Jake was probably trying to do that with that festival, I would say, with that festival. I was thinking probably if we can create a machine. Yeah, it's very Deleuzian in a sense to create a machine that can, works itself. But I don't know, with artists, and probably we cannot do that with our own community. Probably we need to open our doors to other peoples as well, because when I'm thinking about Iranian artist communities, we might face some problems within ourselves. And so maybe a cross-cultural community might work better in a sense. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not very, I don't know, I don't want to give false hope or something because I have no answer to anything. I'm turning 40 in 2 days and I'm thinking like I have no answers and I'm not sure what is right and what is wrong and what can be the good model or if we have any answer to the problems or we can even though change something, but we can probably affect, within the small communities around each other. Like you, I can see, Guadalupe, how you affected your students and how you support them. And I mean, I don't know you guys, but I've just met and I can see there is a community here and it's pretty much strong. And I think that's all we need to do, probably.
Thank you, Pegah. It's really inspiring to see Guadalupe and the group. It's lovely. Not that I was like looking for a real answer. I know it's very kind of complicated matter, and like one could enter to that realm with like really different kind of perspectives. I just wanted to know if you have anything on mind, but
totally understand that.
And I don't see that like it's a very like lovely articulation of like being like kind of re-emerging in a place, and I don't necessarily. I mean, I'm sure that you know that like it's not really kind of about like being Iranian. Like anyone who is kind of new to a place, that would like they would feel the same, right?
Or not new.
For sure.
Yeah,
No, maybe.
yeah.
I find the word maybe, perhaps, probably. I love these words for now.
I think that
Yeah, Vandana, it was really great, whatever you, like the question that you brought. Thank you so much. I think we needed to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. I also, when we met a few times, and or I talked individually with some of the artists present here today, something that I was trying to keep in mind is that I think that sometimes making the right questions does a lot more than having answers, you know, and that one can work with a question forever, like just keep asking it and going deeper and deeper, and from there having more questions, and we don't need to have precise answers, right? It's like a process. So I think that yeah, having questions is the biggest part, and that it's actually, it can be more remediating than having a lot of answers in some ways. So I think this is really wonderful, and it was very insightful to listen to all of you today. So thank you very much. So before I wrap up, I want to invite you tomorrow to join again for the last session of the live assembly. Tomorrow, it's going to be the program called Relocating the Centers for Tomorrow, Strategic Models. So connect again. I want to thank you again to Live for having me and having all of us, to each one of you. It's been really, really nice to see you laugh, to listen to you, to present the presentations, the performances.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I could keep going, but it's almost time. So yeah, I hope that we can stay in conversation. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And thank you everyone who attended today and for all your beautiful comments and questions. So thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Guadalupe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.